Back to the Passive Road to Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Jarrett. Today, we're joined by Roger King. Roger is a seasoned real estate investor with over 27 years' experience, specializing in strategic cash flowing properties. As the founder of a boutique firm, his insights have yielded over $10 million in profits to his investors during the last decade alone. Currently overseeing a diverse portfolio valued at over 50 million and still growing, Roger's current focus centers on residential and commercial properties located in 13 states around the U.S. Currently, a strong emphasis on mobile home park communities scattered in 8 of those states. Roger, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Andrew.
Yeah, great to have you here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Absolutely.
So I guess we'll dive in. I read on your website you started off pursuing a music career initially and then transitioned into real estate. So maybe you can give us a background on that.
Sure. It's funny. I'm old enough that when I was learning how to play the drums back in the late 70s and early 80s, Don't Stop Believing was actually the first song I learned.
Nice.
And surprisingly, in 1980, my dad started investing in real estate too. And I was always going to be a famous musician and tour the world. And I always watched him grow his real estate portfolio and change how he, impacted the family's lifestyle. At one point there's 4 of us and we had 5 cars for some reason. And I'm just like, well, I guess it doesn't make sense, but awesome, right?
Right.
And, hey, who's got the truck today? I've got the truck. Okay. So, just the changes in economic abilities, really stuck within my brain of, how does all of this thing work? And as you grow up and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be famous. And then I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I realized, I wasn't as good as many of the other guys that were already there and playing a lot of sessions. And, I've got some friends that are, touring at the upper echelon of the world, famous music artists. And I'm, wasn't my path. So over the course of those 6 years at Berklee in Boston, I realized that I'm going to have to figure out some other ways and got into Carlton Sheets program.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Back in the early 90s. And then when I got out of school, I said, look, I'm unable to make enough money as a musician right now. So let's start a real estate investment company. My brother-in-law, who had just gotten out of the first Gulf War, he and his newborn baby and my sister moved to Orlando. I moved to Orlando and we opened up shop with my dad.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
it took me about 6 months driving for dollars to find my first property that I could actually wholesale. And it was a wild ride, but I'm still a drummer. I'm still a musician, even though I'm not really playing gigs right now. I've just moved down to Puerto Rico when I don't have that network built up just yet, but it'll happen pretty soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got a beautiful background there, by the way. Love it.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm 40 feet from the water.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I'm very blessed. Very blessed.
That's awesome. So your dad, did he have a real estate firm, like a sales firm, or what? How'd you partner
Now,
with him?
he was he just started off as an investor and he did the same sort of thing. And I think his first investment in 1980, after a few months, he wholesaled a contract and made $17,000 or $18,000 in 1980, which was a big chunk.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is this? And so he never opened up a brokerage or went down that path, but he started buying houses. And then he would own or finance them on, land contracts way back then, which were popular. And he just, he kept growing it. And I'm always kind of watching from afar how he started. And I was really impressed still to this day of what he'd accomplished. And then they changed some tax laws and, in the late 80s, 87, they changed a capital gain tax where he'd already had all of these. I think he had a portfolio of 40 houses starting from nothing. And then over 5 or 6 years, built this pretty big portfolio,
Yeah.
sold these land contracts, and the capital gain law changed, where he was now forced to realize the capital gain, even though he never realized any of the capital, right? So he had to pay those taxes, which, bankrupted him along with millions of other people,
Yeah.
which then, of course, 2 years later, they repealed the Tax Reform Act, and, you start over again.
Wow.
And yeah.
The cycles of entrepreneurship, right?
Oh, I tell you, the government, I love aspects of the government, but certain people are just so stupid.
Yeah.
They don't think about things the way normal people do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Agreed.
yeah.
So you started on there, you did a wholesale. I guess
Yeah.
now I know you've done over 180 flips, I believe, total.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you progress from wholesaling, up through flipping and what you're doing now?
Sure. The first wholesale deal was back in 1996, and it was me driving for dollars. And I finally, found a house, went to the probate office on my dad's recommendation, found the lawyer in North Carolina. I'd started in Orlando. The lawyer for the probate was up in North Carolina. I contacted them, and they said, make an offer. So I offered them, $5,000, and they're like, oh, come on, Mr. King. And I asked them, what's the lowest you would take? And they said, we can't do anything for less than 10,000. And so I whited out on the contract, and the 5,000, put 10,500 and initialed it, and then faxed it back to them. And within 20 minutes, they signed it and sent it back. And I had my first property under contract. And a few days later, I made a flyer, went to the Central Florida Real Estate Investors Association, CFRI. Yep. You probably have gone.
Yep. It's still there. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. It was, at that point, when I was there, it was probably 200 people, 1996. And I think it was July that I won Deal of the Month for flipping the contract in a few days to a builder, and made my first $25,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, this can be done. How can we do this much more and grow the business? And, we fixed and flipped some houses. And as it happens, maybe some of your listeners have experienced this. If you're in business with families, sometimes you butt heads. You want to do it one way, they want to do it another way. And, so I started pursuing more of my musical endeavors at that point for a couple of years. And still was always thinking, okay, how else can I do the real estate thing? Because I'm not living the life that I want to live.
Sure.
So how can I figure out how to put all of this together without necessarily bringing on all these partners that I, don't jibe with the way they do things. And it took me a little while. So I moved to California in 2003, Southern California. And after a while, I'd gotten with a company that was doing these large condo hotel renovations in Palm Springs, California, in Phoenix, and in Portugal. Oh, wow. And so in 2006, there was a lot of stuff going on. I moved to Palm Springs in 2008. In September, and then literally 3 months later, the crash, we lose everything.
Yep.
The entire company goes defunct. And I just, I sat there licking my wounds for a few months, not knowing what to do, as many people didn't in 2009 and 10. But I said, okay, I know what to do. I put the bandit signs up. We buy houses cash. And it took a little while. It took another 6 months. Somebody called me, and he said, hey, tell me what you do. So I went into it, and he hung up, and I said, okay, that's, the normal process.
Yeah.
Literally 6 months later, I get a phone call from this lady, Marge. She says, hey, I saw your number on my husband's desk. He just passed away. Oh. And I need you to buy my house. And this is November 13th of 2010. I mean, 8:30 in the morning. I remember it, right?
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I felt I guess I had the presence of mind to understand that this is where something magical was about to change in my world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went over to her house and met with her and her daughter, found out the house, put the property under contract, hustled. And in 30 days, I had flipped another contract. Nice. And made $188,000
on the one deal.
On one deal.
Nice.
And so Christmas, right?
Yeah.
I closed the deal for a lovely Christmas in 2010.
Oh, yeah.
And thought to myself, this is my moment to parlay this into a new business where I get to call the shots.
Hey, everyone. Hope you're enjoying this episode. Are you ready to maximize your real estate investing to its full potential? Send an email to andrew@jarrettcapital.com and take your life and business to all new levels. That's andrew@jarrettcapital.com.
And it was one of those, it was really groundbreaking. And so I decided, how do I want to conduct my business? And I don't want to necessarily buy a lot of properties at this moment, but I do want to start loaning money. I like the idea of earning, at the time, 13 or 14% plus 4 points up front.
Right.
And then just the idea of how can I build that into a business? And I did that for a number of years, learning some hard lessons along the way. I had my first 6-figure loss a couple of years into it, because I dealt with a professional borrower. And then I started partnering with people. I started structuring things a lot differently than loaning money in a first position mortgage. I decided I'm going to buy the property in a trust. And so I then control the trust. You're in Florida. Florida has a land trust statute. Oh, yeah. The people in California, I've got a friend, and she was like, "Oh, trusts don't work here in California." And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever. And at that point, I'm like, I've got a lot of revenue being generated. I've got some momentum, and I've really started partnering with people, and we started building projects. We started, doing a lot of renovations and just really cycling that, bringing in a lot of investor capital, paying them every month, building these other things, pulling out some of my own equity, and just building this new sort of monster product that I've got, where there's a few different things. There's, and now it's grown into like, we've just purchased our 15th mobile home park. So right now we own 14 because we sold our first one.
Okay.
I own a majority interest in a property up in Zion National Park. It's a glamping project. I own a portion of a resort on the chain of lakes in Minnesota. There's 12 units here and some land over there, and a commercial building there, so it's a really great portfolio. And I went to a Tony Robbins event a few years ago now, and was inspired to finally share all of this with everybody. So that's why we're here today.
That's awesome. Yeah, his events can be life-changing for sure.
Oh yeah. My first Tony Robbins event was in 1992 when I was in Boston, and it was, I was in college, and it was difficult to buy the $100 ticket,
Yeah.
But if you've ever gone to any of his events, they are life-changing events. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now with your mobile homes, I guess what do you look for with those now?
A lot of what we're looking for is, obviously cash, maybe not on day one, because we may have a lot of people we need to kick out. That happens certainly in this asset class.
Sure.
Some deadbeat tenants. We have a lot of, what we've done historically is bought properties that have a lot of empty spaces so that we can fill those spaces with either new units or units that are new to us that we have to renovate.
Sure.
And it's kind of a balancing act of, are we looking for a lot of tenant-owned home parks or a lot of park-owned homes parks? Right. So we're really, balancing, do we sell the park-owned homes to the tenants, generate that cash and then use that to buy another unit? Do we, rent out a smaller portion just to help, our monthly cash flow, and just really ascertaining what's most important in this park. Are some parks aren't really conducive to selling the unit. Some are really conducive, and those tend to be a little bit nicer parks.
Sure. That
So,
makes sense. Yeah.
80,000 people MSA is a major criteria,
Right.
minimum. After buying some of these smaller parks, we're not necessarily interested in parks that are, less than 30 spaces anymore.
Sure.
We have some still that are, I think, 15, and it's just so
Probably just the
time
management,
consuming.
right? Is
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at some point we're going to, sell those 1031, exchange it into something that's better. Little more cost effective.
Yeah.
Managerial wise.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But, our first park we bought was in about 90 minutes outside of Oklahoma City, and it was just too far away. We also learned on that park, it had a sewer lagoon, and that wasn't a fun situation when the lagoon started to overflow because the most rain in 20 years occurred. So we're getting a septic truck to pump it, $60,000 later.
Fun little lessons, right?
Yeah. The things you learn a couple of years into a project.
Yeah, exactly. Now I want to ask you, I saw on your website as well, you have the 1090 rule and the TEM framework strategies.
Yes.
If you could kind of elaborate on those a little for us.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let's start with the TEM framework. What that stands for is time, experience, and money. And, some of us have, both time, both, the experience and the money, or a lot of times newer people or younger investors have one or two of those, but they're missing a piece. Yeah. And so, one of the things that I really look for is how much time do I have when I'm looking at a new property? We get a couple of emails a day of new properties coming in just saying, hey, this is for sale. I'm like, okay, no, we're able to cherry pick.
Right.
So do I have enough time to put this into the portfolio? The diligence process, the lending process. I mean, it's months and months and months with no income, but you're investing all this time. Right. Our experience mostly, for mobile home parks, after buying this many, we're pretty clear on what we need to do, what we need to look out for, how to structure these things. Sure. Do we do a full syndication, or do we do a different type of structure to bring in a smaller amount of money for investors? Or do we have the capital from, like this first one, we just did a 1031 exchange into the one we just bought a couple of days before Thanksgiving. Okay. So we have to really understand what the time, the experience, and the money situations are. And what I, teach a lot of people is, you have to, if you have a lot of time, but no experience and no money, there's a way for you still to invest, and there's still a way for you to learn and to get the experience. And that's from getting a mentor, getting a partner, or some variation on those two, and finding capital for a deal is not necessarily easy, but there's a lot of capital out there. Right. You just have to know how to package it, how to present it, and make sure that you can live up to when you borrow money from, an 80-year-old retired friend that, says, hey, I've got 300,000 in my IRA, that you honor that agreement and make sure that you get him or her the capital back. Yeah. So the TEM framework really, is sort of a series of questions about how much time am I going to need to bring this specific asset? And do I have that time? Can I cut something else out? Because we only have finite time. Sure. Can I leverage somebody else's time? Do I have an assistant? Do I have a CPA? Those people to help set some of these systems up. Do I have the experience? Do I need to get the experience? Do I need to pay for the experience? With an attorney to draft the $40,000 syndication because we're doing a $30 million capital raise, or do I already have an LLC operating agreement that we've used in the past and I can just So those are the different types of experiences.
Yeah.
And then the money is, do I have to go to hard money? Do I have to go to private investors? Do I have the capital? Do I want to invest my capital? And just really, determining each of those things for every single investment you're about to make.
Yeah.
And all of that information, that TEM framework, really falls into what I've defined as the 1090 rule. And the 1090 rule, to me, after having so many properties that were not paying on time, and I'm still paying my investors. Okay, so how do I adjust this in my brain, and then steer my focus so that I'm not always upside down in cash, which a lot of investors are house rich and cash poor.
Right.
So they own all these houses, but they can't pay their car payment.
Right.
How can you adjust your focus and really strategically build your portfolio so you have enough cash flow every month, but also you're doing one or two or three, larger profitable deals, fix and flips or development deals, so that you're not upside down with all that cash that you're having to pay on that, with all of your income every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you structure that? So that's really the 1090 rule. The way I really describe it is, my experience is different than your experience. You being the general public.
Right.
And I have a different risk tolerance than you. Right.
Right.
And so I can say I can bring on X number of dollars of negative cash flow while I'm developing this piece of land. And somebody else can't do that because they don't have any other income sources.
Right.
So you want to find an income source type property or investment before you start going negative every month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So guiding people through the process of figuring out what their own specific 1090 rule is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was clear or not.
No, it was. Yeah. I mean, I like that, especially the TEM. So probably most people start with the T, right, and work their way up towards the M, would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. I didn't
same.
have the experience and I certainly didn't have the money, but I had a lot of time.
Yep.
So I would drive around driving for dollars, and I would write addresses down or put up bandit signs and do whatever I could because I had more time than I had experience or money.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I used to put out bandit signs once a week. So
right.
I know how that goes. Yeah.
And when would you do it? What was your schedule?
Usually I do it like 11:30 at night.
Right. On a Friday night.
Right.
After
on the telephone poles, Yeah.
Totally.
Yep.
Now, how did you do like with bandit signs? We
got some amount of calls. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing is, now you have to watch out for, code enforcement in certain areas, but otherwise, it worked out really well.
I was always very apologetic. Even if it was me putting them up, and the code enforcement people would call, they'd say, look, you can't have this sign here.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, they put it up there. I'm so sorry. No, that's such a drag. I will come right down and get it. And usually at that point they say, no, you don't got to come down here. We took it up. Don't put any more there. I'm like, I told the guys not to put it up there. I'm really super sorry.
Yeah.
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 But I got 3 calls on it over the weekend. So
right. So it's worth it. Yeah.
Totally worth it. Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of market, fluctuations in your career.
Yeah.
I guess, nobody has a crystal ball, of course, but based on, what you've seen, I guess, what are you most excited about right now? And is there anything that has you a little worried?
Oh boy. Let's start with worried first. And I don't actually ever use the word worried. I have, potential concerns.
Yeah.
Right. One of my biggest potential concerns would be, to go into a political thing, the Ukraine war funding from our side gets shut down and Russia overtakes Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's a global catastrophe waiting to happen.
Right.
And when those types of dominoes begin to fall, that leads our entire world and specifically our country into uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already got some sort of pent up uncertainty. And if we add more uncertainty to that, that's, we don't know what's going to happen. Is Russia going to attack Poland? Because that's the NATO. I mean, those are the types of things that are most concerning to me.
Right.
And, so I don't know what our politicians are thinking. It's like they don't read history and they're not seeing, okay, just go watch the Tom Hanks movie, Charlie Wilson's War from the early 80s, war in Afghanistan, and understand that Russia right now, the Russian government, Vladimir Putin, is attempting to do the same sort of thing that they did with Afghanistan 40 years ago.
Sure.
And we're in a situation where if our politicians don't solve this and keep funding and help Ukraine win the war, it's gonna have massively negative impact on our country here at home.
Oh yeah.
And that's going to impact my investment and your investments and everybody's listening investment. Yeah. It's going to impact our businesses. It's, if we thought the pandemic had problems with supply chains, it's going to impact that stuff.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So the Fed's not going to lower rates because of the uncertainty. So rates will stay the same. Property values will continue to drop. It's just a chain of, a chain reaction effect of everything that's going on. So the thing that frustrates me the most is the stupidity of the politicians right now, not approving more funding.
Yeah.
It's not to say that there aren't legitimate things that need to also take place. Does the border need to be secured? Sure. Get that solved too. Okay. Next. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
What am I most excited about? I think that the rise in interest rates presents an interesting scenario coming up here. And all of this talk right now about lowering interest rates, I've read somewhere 6 times over the course of the next, 12 months. Right. Like, come on, man, are you going to really get it back down to 5%? I mean, that would be phenomenal. But there's a correlation to, property values rising as interest rates lower.
Right.
So, okay. So, then everybody's got more equity. Now, the affordability aspect of it drops, but that's capitalism. Is it make it right? In some ways, yes. In other ways, definitely not. So it's, selfishly, I'm excited for those rates to drop if they drop.
Right. Yep. It's good for property owners. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's good for property owners, and hopefully more than anything, I would hope that so we've refinanced probably 4 or 5 properties and bought 2 properties over the course of the last year. And, the lenders right now, and if you're a lender listening in on this, just understand the frustration from borrowers. Right. One borrower, me and my couple of partners, when you guys give us a rate and a term sheet and you change it 3 weeks before close of escrow, right, and you say, no, we want another $100,000 or $200,000 of your repair costs in escrow, that really makes you guys look scumbaggy.
Yeah.
And
throws off your numbers and returns and everything. Yeah.
And so like the lender on one of our mobile home parks, they just said, we need you to deposit $100,000 of your repair costs, your capital expenditures, so that we can draw that back to you once the work is done, which essentially means you're going to hold on to our $100,000, not pay us any interest on it.
Right.
I've got to come up with another $100,000 to actually get the work done so that you can then reimburse me that other $100,000.
Yeah.
And you don't tell me this until 2 or 3 weeks before the close of escrow.
Right.
Do your job, people.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. That is extremely frustrating.
Yeah. And it gives bankers a bad name. So if anybody wants to find out, if any lenders out there are listening to this, I would say go call 10 of your previous clients and say, what's the worst thing that we've done and how can we solve it? And you're going to get an earful, number one, but you're also going to find out your way through the next 2 years of working with investors.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point.
That's if anybody here is a lender.
Now I've got one more question for you before we get into our
Oh,
5 to Thrive.
yes, absolutely.
But first, how do people reach out and contact you, find out more about you?
Sure. My website, of course, is rogerking.com.
Mhm.
And they can they can join my email list. They can, get my newsletter. They can read some of my blogs. They can go to, my social. They can see my Insta, my TikTok, all that stuff is on there. If they want to shoot me an email, they can catch me through there, roger@rogerking.com. Pretty simple.
Yeah, pretty simple.
And it's ROGERKING. And right now, in the last few weeks, I've launched a new course and membership group, which is called the Real Estate Investing Accelerator, but it's the Founders Group. I've just started this, so I'm building a core group of people that I can, that have always wanted to invest in real estate, but have never been able to for any reason at all. This is how they can start. And I've got a step-by-step guide on how you can get your first real estate investment, and we'll help you figure out a plan of attack on what it is you want to focus on. Is it fixing and flipping? Is it wholesaling? Whatever it is, you can do this, and I'm going to help guide you down this path. And this founders group is, going to last for the first 50 people. And then for a few months, we're going to tweak it all and get it right and answer everybody's questions. Then we're going to launch it to the rest of the world. Awesome. And so if you want to get in now, over the Christmas holidays and really catch up and start your education, you can find this through rogerking.com as well.
Awesome. It's a great way to launch into the new year, right?
Yes, it is. Start off and accomplish your goals. And I'm really excited. This was the Tony Robbins thing 4 years ago. It's taken me 4 years to get this thing launched. Yeah. And so this is level 1. And then level 2 will probably open up in June or July of next year. Mm-hmm. And that'll be for people that have already bought, a few properties, but want to scale that business. Sure. And we go into great detail on LLC structures and the 1090 rule and trusts and putting together your team and the whole big enchilada. And so that's going to, that's a few months down the road still. I just want to get the founders group really dialed in and help some of these people that have been reaching out to me and already joined, are on their path right now to, buying their first real estate investment. That's awesome. So I'm super blessed with that. And I'm super excited to help. Anybody who wants to help, wants the help can join right now. That's
great. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. So they can just.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So last question is, if you had one takeaway for our audience to absorb from this episode, what would that be?
Oh gosh, you can do it. Whatever, right? Literally whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mentioned my age, Don't Stop Believing was the first song I learned in 1981. I think is when I learned it on an 8-track in my garage in Inglewood, Florida. Yeah. And, you fast forward X number of years, 40 years. And I am, living maybe a different dream, but I'm still living what, one of my dreams is being on the beach. I've wanted to be on the beach forever, and it's taken me some time, and but I've understood that I can do it. And if I can do it, everybody can do it. Yeah. And what they need is somebody to help them out. Yeah. And it's me, or it's Alex Hormozy, or it's Grant Cardone, or whomever it is. It's you, Andrew. I mean, what you're doing is a tremendous service, helping people, getting new information out to people every day. The information is there, but it takes more than just gathering information. As you know, you got to get out at 11 o'clock and put up bandit signs.
That's right.
Right. If you want to make it happen, you got to go do the work.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? And what are the right steps? So anybody can do this.
Yep. I agree. Great message.
Thanks.
So now our 5 to Thrive. So this is a word association game. I'm just going to go off 5 words. Just give me the first word or phrase that comes to mind.
Okay.
The only thing is you cannot repeat the same answer.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. All right. First one, personal development.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Market fluctuations.
Opportunity.
Cash flow.
The foundation.
Mhm. Financial freedom.
Puerto Rico.
And Roger King.
Blessed.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Roger, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Andrew, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for letting me rant and hopefully interact. And I hope I've been helpful for your listeners.